Hello and welcome back to the CPO Strategy Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sean Parch, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Thorsten Makowski, an Associate Professor of Supply Chain Management and Purchasing at SKEMA Business School. Today we'll be looking at procurement's role as a growth function and evaluate some of the key topics in the space, including digitalization, sustainability, and procurement's talent shortage. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to the CPO Strategy Podcast.
Hello, Thorsten, and welcome to the CPO Strategy Podcast. Are you well?
Hi, Sean. Yeah, I'm doing great. It's Friday. It's summer, so I'm really doing fine.
Fantastic. And look, I must be honest with our viewers. We did try to record this a couple of weeks ago, but unfortunately, technology being the way it is, didn't let us happen. So it's nice to sort of have you back on. It was a bit of a nightmare, wasn't it, when that happened?
Yeah, technology is also a really hot topic in procurement, and it's a two-edged sword. So it has some really positive effects, but sometimes it really can go in your way.
Yeah, as we found out. I understand you're on holiday next week as well. You're going to Hungary. Tell us a little bit about that. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm a professor now, so I have these 3 months of break, which is ridiculous. So as a professor, you have a lot of time off, which you can use for this and that. And next week, I'm really looking forward to for going for 1 week with my family to Budapest and to Hungary in general.
Nice. Yeah. You back to I guess work on in September, so only a few more weeks left to your holiday.
Yeah, 2 more weeks.
Yeah. Enjoy it, make the most of it. What I love to do when I when I speak to people like yourself, I love to find out about why procurement, because I think it's a standing joke in the industry, isn't it, that people just fall into procurement by accident, by happenstance. It's not really sort of thought out when people sort of go to school. Is that the case for you? Maybe you can tell me a little bit about why this was the space that for you.
Yeah, Sean, you're completely right. So unfortunately, the joke is true for me as well. So I started with doing a diploma in physics, but I found it too theoretical and too little with people. So I made a PhD in logistics and operations. And then I started my first work. I was an assistant to a COO. And I was working here and there in operations and planning, in logistics, in procurement. And in the beginning, procurement didn't really see super interesting for me, but it just took me a couple, I would say, months to find out that there are some aspects about procurement which are really cool. And I would say the coolest one for me is that even at the beginning of your career, very early on, maybe you are allowed to optimize a category, and then you're responsible for millions of dollars or millions of euros. And where else in your career are you able to be responsible for that amount of money? And the same is true for a CPO. A lot of CPOs are responsible for billions of dollars. Who else than a CEO is also responsible for billions of dollars? So it's kind of a cool position and area, but it also has some specific challenges. And I would say the biggest challenge, and this one got better in the last years, is that not everybody really understands how important and how valuable procurement can be for companies. So sometimes you have to explain to people how you can make more of procurement and why it is really becoming more important. Fortunately, to some extent, the crisis that we had in the last years made our life in procurement easier because people were just realizing how
Yeah.
dependent they are on
People
supply
know
chain
how
and
important
procurement.
procurement is these days, don't they? Whereas before, this just wasn't the case. I think procurement was seen as some sort of back office function hidden away somewhere. Whereas now you've got your seat at the table, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're mentioning seats at tables. So you see it in so many things. So, for example, the ability that as a CPO, you are allowed to be part of the board that has significantly increased. Also, the importance of procurement, for example, how early in new projects procurement is involved into something has increased. So, yeah, it helped us a lot. But still, and I think partly it's just coming from language. So some people think procurement is just buying, and their individual experience with buying is going into a supermarket and buying their, I don't know, a package of beans or something like
Mm,
that. So they assume it's simple. And of course, it's not simple, and
mm,
it's much more than just buying stuff. But I think that has led to a lot of confusion. But now I would say for people who start a career now, maybe in the history of procurement, now is the perfect timing, because that's how I see it. Procurement has a specific value, and now people start to realize the potential of procurement. So if you enter into that area today, that could be probably a good career perspective for you.
because some people say it's probably the most exciting time in procurement, and maybe, to some people, maybe that aren't in the industry, they would think, well, why is that? Because look at all the supply sort of shortages and the challenges and the talent issues that we're facing. There is so many issues, isn't there? But
Yeah,
why do you feel it's such an exciting time?
and just that you use the words exciting is telling me something about your personality. I would say. I think what we are seeing in today's world is that, and especially in procurement, it's more complex, it's more challenging. So it's less what procurement was about something like 10 or 20 years ago, about making small incremental improvements, like reducing cost in projects over 2% for a specific category by a tender or by a renegotiation or something like that. Now something, the storm just hits in your face, and you just need to adapt to that. So what we are seeing now is some people really thrive in this environment, and this is for people who have kind of a flexible mindset and also have a more general management perspective on things, while people who are more introvert and more analytical, for them this is more pain, so they suffer in this sort of situations.
Because it's a VUCA world, isn't it? In the sense that it's a volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It's really come to the fore. The ground is certainly shaky, isn't it? And, you've got to try and meet all these different priorities, haven't you? What do you feel that the CPO needs to have, in order to thrive in this world? Because it's an ever-changing world, particularly in procurement at the moment, isn't it?
So first of all, my starting position when somebody tells me is that the world is changing significantly, and you have to apply to new rules. Typically, I'm very skeptical with that, because sometimes it's just a fad, it's just a new trend. So when people say, "Oh, we live in this VUCA world where everything is uncertain and changes," is it really true? And I would say we have to look at a couple of drivers for this volatility. And I would say one of the drivers that we have seen in the last years was catastrophes. Something like there's a flooding in Thailand, there is a volcano in Iceland that's blowing up. Is that really increasing? I would say no. But we also have political changes, wars,
Mm-hmm.
conflicts, trade wars. Are we currently in the situation where this is kind of at a peak level? I would say no, but I would say it has increased in the last years. So here we are, I would say, in kind of an upward swing, but hopefully it will go down sometime soon. I'm not.
We
I'm
just need a
hoping that.
quiet year, don't we? It just feels like there's always something at the moment.
Oh, it's such a different world. If we can expect that the big war that we have in Europe at the moment just stops and we don't run into a new conflict,
Mm,
or it escalates, or we enter into another big war, that's so different from a supply chain and procurement perspective. But let me mention one more point, which I think is really the driver why the world is going into generally into more VUCA, and that is technology and innovation on one side, and
mm,
more demands from customer perspective on the other side. So the product lens, the length of innovations, the idea that you have to come up with a new process, with a new product, with a new technology,
mhm,
now comes faster. And that will probably not reverse. It's not trivial, because you can think of sustainability overpowering VUCA. That could
mhm,
happen if you believe in a world where we really want to reduce CO2 emissions, and that means we need to produce less. Then we also have less innovation, and then we would have less VUCA. But I would say, at least for the next decades, I'm not expecting that. So I'm personally thinking that for the next decades, we will continuously live in such a changing, exciting, and that was your wording, environment. And I personally believe it will become more exciting and more volatile in the next years to come.
Yeah, and as you mentioned there, just on technology, it is one of those things that you've got to have it, haven't you? And I know that technology, it can be a little bit challenging in procurement, because some people want to just adopt technology like it's going out of fashion with no real strategy around it. They think, wow, this is cool. Wow, I just want it. But if there's no thought, then there's not going to be any long-term success, and you're actually just going to get yourself into trouble, aren't you? So
Yeah, I think so wonderful. So after this volatility, now we are running into the second big trend, I would say, that we have in procurement at the moment. That's technology. And again, I see this as a two-edged sword. So on one hand, you can say, oh, it gives us so much more opportunities, and that can give us a competitive edge, and we can be more profitable, and we can be faster, and we can have a higher quality, and customers like us more. Yeah, absolutely. But if you look at past data, the net present value, so the typical outcome of an investment in technology, was negative. So technology investments and investments in mergers and acquisitions are the only two things which on average are destroying value. And I think that is not just coming from nothing, it's because it's so complicated. So I think in today's world, we are in a very interesting situation where the importance and the potential value gain from technology is increasing, but it's also very difficult to implement it. And it's also very difficult to kind of get the strategic picture and to be well placed in implementing that. So I personally think for most of the companies, there's an easy right strategy to deal with technology, and that is what I would call the second mover advantage. So you consider what are the technologies that might work for you, you look for your peers, and when you realize that they try it and they fail, you are lucky, you are not involved. And when you realize they tried and they are successful with that, you try to copy it as fast as possible. I think that for most companies, of course, it depends on your industry, your strategy, your size, your country. But I think for most companies, that's a great strategy.
And is it about failing fast as well when you adopt new technology? Is it about sort of trying these things, being open, being agile? Because some people, you got two types of people. Haven't you? You've got the people that love technology and they want to, they can't wait to embrace it. That was a bit like me with ChatGPT a couple of months
Yeah.
ago when that first sort of rolled out. I was like, straight away, I was like, well, let's see the potential of what we can do with this new AI. And then you got the other people that are stuck in their ways. They love their legacy system. They love their way of working. They know what they know. Do you think that's the sort of challenge, on both sort of, as you say, the double-edged sword on both sides?
I would say that's one big a challenge. And we in procurement, we also know that from other categories. So wherever we deal in a category and we are buying and implementing new stuff, when you talk with the people who are involved on that, they are really excited about it. So they typically want too much of it. And it's kind of our deal, our role as procurement, to also sit on the money and just spend the money on the stuff that is really creating value for your company. And again, maybe you don't want to be the first one who is doing it. And just my experience from being a consultant for 20 years, typically when you are doing this sort of projects, it takes much more time than you anticipate. You have much more implementation problems than you expected, and you spend much more time than you expected. So I think for some companies who really get excited with kind of the cool new stuff, I would say, as a first teaser question, did you already kind of solve all your problems with the basic stuff? There are so many large and high quality performing companies in the world which still have something like 30 different ERP systems, for which it is so difficult to consolidate the data just into one basis. So maybe you want to start with this first before you go into something very, very exciting.
That's it. Walk before you can run.
Yeah,
Sort of mow your own lawn before you mow your neighbours.
I fully agree with it. But you're completely right. So it's so exciting. It's so interesting. New perspective. It's so hard to estimate kind of where's the limit. Only the sky sometimes seems to be the limit to it. But
But
yeah,
you get carried
you
away.
can make
Yeah.
mistakes, and it also binds a lot of resources. We talked about the VUCA world and how complex and how much time that is eating for you. Well, some people have to oversee the projects for digitalization as well. And maybe we come into that topic too. So limitation of resources, especially good people in procurement, that's another challenge that we have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Talent shortages are a big deal at the moment, aren't they? And maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about that now. What have you made of sort of these talent shortages? Because is it the case that procurement needs that rebrand and that people don't really understand that this is a career option for them? Because other people that I've spoken to in the industry, they feel that procurement sort of needs to sort of become a little bit more attractive, and actually it doesn't need these sort of high level sort of roles, and it can be said in a different way. Is that something you agree with?
Yeah, I would agree with that. But let me start with trying to answer the question: do we have, from my perspective, a talent shortage? And
Do we?
I would start with we always had a talent shortage. So when we talk about operational procurement and strategic procurement, I would say operational procurement for most companies never is and never was really a problem from a personal, from a talent perspective. But strategic procurement typically has problems, and it ever had. And one of the problems is that procurement, as you mentioned, within a lot of companies and also at a lot of business schools, is not the coolest topic. So it doesn't have the most sexiest appearance, like I don't know, investment banking or consulting or finance or strategy or whatever. That is changing. We talked about that. So the world is getting better regarding that. And the second is the world of procurement is surprisingly complex. So most people think, oh, it's just about buying. But as a CPO, you need to understand how you deal with suppliers. You need to understand how you deal with people and entities from different cultures. So you need to be good in culture and communication. You need to understand technology. We talked about that. You need to understand sustainability. You need to be able to deal with the risks. We talked about that already. So you need to understand the customer, the financial impacts, your value on strategy. So there's so much on that. And it's very difficult to find a person who kind of really understands everything. You have a lot of people who are good in auditing or are good in supplier relationship management or in tendering, but having this whole picture, that was difficult. What makes this worse, and I would agree with your thesis, it's getting worse,
Mm,
is that the world of procurement is getting more and more complex. So
mm,
we always had a shortage, but now the demand for a CPO and even for a mid-level manager in procurement is increasing. So it's hard to keep up with that. One thing that is helping us is that procurement gets more attractive and gets more into the news.
hmm.
The second thing, and this is kind of my job today, is to bring it more into business schools and universities. It's
Yeah,
I know you have one ranking about business schools and master degrees in
yeah.
procurement, and one of the, from my perspective, really shocking things is that a lot of business schools do not even offer a degree in procurement. So it's only something like 5 or 10% of the good business schools in the world do offer this. And that creates a
That's not
situation
nearly
where
enough.
it is very hard for a
Mm.
person who says, oh, I'm in my 20s or in my 30s. I want to have my career in procurement and I want to learn more details. It's hard to find even a university that has a high quality program for you. So that's another real challenge in that area.
And it also comes back to what we sort of joked about at the start, that we said that, it's a standard joke in the industry, and nobody sort of comes into procurement on purpose. And we should change that. And that should be sort of, not me and you personally, we can't obviously bring that change, but it should be something that is looked into it, and to try and be a bit more measured with it.
Absolutely. And I see also one more indicator of hope. And that is sustainability. So sustainability, we will maybe talk about that, and it's again a two-edged sword from my perspective. But one thing about sustainability is, if you really think about sustainability, the big impact that you have as a company is not typically in your own production. It's in your thousands and thousands of suppliers. So if you really want to create a sustainable world or a sustainable company, you typically have to go into supply chain management or logistics or procurement. So this is where you have to go for that. And now more and more of the younger generation, they want to have jobs that not only fulfill career and money purposes, but also they want to do something good, something positive to the world. So I now have really a bunch of students who enter into procurement because they want to improve the world. And that's something really new. We didn't have that 5 or 10 years ago.
That's really interesting that you say that, actually, because that was my next question to you. It was going to be like, well, did people not want to make a difference 20 years ago? But I guess people are just a lot more conscious, aren't they? People, even when you're consumers and you're procuring, in the supermarket, even just going into Tesco, Morrison's, wherever you are, you can go in and you can go, well, actually, well, this one's made, it's environmentally friendly. I like the company. I trust them. I'm going to go with this option. This is a real thing, isn't it? People are being very, very mindful of what they do and how they do it now, aren't they? When perhaps, as you say, 10 years ago, they weren't.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I want to add to your perspective. So I fully agree with your perspective that the importance of sustainability, and we can talk I would say, for hours what sustainability really means. So we can just discuss the words, so what we think about it. But let's assume you really care about sustainability. It's a difference on who you are, how important it is for you. One thing that I, for example, see with my students is it's a big difference on from which country you come from.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you are, let's say, a Chinese or an Indian or an American or a European person really makes a difference. It's also age. Interestingly, it's also gender, and it's income levels. But on average, people care more about that. Regulations have gone significantly up. So if we go back in time, something like 5 years, if you then went to talk with CPOs, they typically told you, yeah, we see that sustainability is kind of looming around there and we have to address it somewhere in the future, but it's not super urgent because just some of our customers ask us for. But now sometimes the government with their regulations, they just hit you in the face and you have to do it no matter what. So you don't have
Yeah,
a
that's a
choice.
great point, because before it was sort of something that was nice to have, but now it's essential. You're forced into it. Either whether you like it or not. And I know it's a good thing to do, and companies feel that way. But they don't have a choice now, do they?
Absolutely, yes. The only thing that I personally see as something difficult is that what people kind of perceive as the meaning of sustainability can be so different for different people. So, for example, when you maybe talk with a person who's born in, let's say, India, for them, when they talk about sustainability, it's maybe about they don't want to have child labor and they want to have access to good water and to schools. For us in the Western world, we are many, many times simplifying it to CO2 emissions, which we connect to global warming and maybe something like climate crisis. So that's a very, very different perspective. And when you go deeper into that, these goals are many times conflicting. So what makes a person maybe a little more rich is just the opposite of what reduces CO2 emissions. So sustainability in itself is not a homogeneous and easy thing. Depend on where you want to focus on, it can lead into very, very different directions. And that leads in our world, I think, to something fascinating, and that makes us as CPOs, I would say, more political people. So we are not only becoming more general managers, we are also getting more political in our communication because people really care about what we are saying, and we really have to look for our words that it fits the culture and the customer perspective. And not every company has done a good job on that.
No, for sure. Where do you think that sustainability is now, on the CPO agenda? Because there are obviously a number of things on there, aren't there? You've got technology, obviously ESG is on there, as we're talking about. There's a whole load of, a load of, things on there. They're just obviously on the back of COVID a couple of years ago, and obviously the war in Ukraine. They're juggling a lot. Where is sustainability on there?
So I would go with multiple argumentations. First is we are much farther than something like 3 or 5 years ago. So if you see sustainability as an important trend, we are working in the right direction. Maybe we could do faster or something like that. But yeah, we are making progress. There's a second theme, and the second theme is short term kills long term. So if you have a long term ambition, like let's become better in technology, let's be more sustainable, but you have a problem because just something really breaks down in your supply chain, well, you first start with kind of repairing your supply chain. And because the last years have been so dramatically volatile, sometimes short term did just kill long term. So this is what we have seen. And the third thing I would say is that the importance of sustainability highly depends not only on your industry, it also depends on your location. And I would mainly distinguish between three areas: Europe, the United States, and kind of the rest of the world. For the rest of the world, sustainability is something important, but it's not a priority.
Mm.
So getting wealthy and having a good middle class for a country like India or China, or if you look into Africa, has the highest priority, and sustainability is more secondary to that. Here in Europe, we are currently, I would say, at the top of the front of really embracing sustainability to hopefully have a positive impact on the world in the 10 or 20 or 30 years from now. And America is at an interesting turning point, and I don't know where it really is going to. If you look at the two different parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, and for example, you mentioned ESG, there are now, I think, more than 20 states, Republican states in the US, where if you follow ESG policies, you are not allowed to participate in state tenders. So doing something with ESG is negative for you. So the US will be kind of an indicator of where we are going in that direction. So in Europe, if we just have a European perspective, it's just like it looks like it has to continuously increase, but it's not sure. So maybe we are at the top of this wave into caring more about sustainability. It's not trivial that it will get higher and higher every year.
Let's hope so. And that feeds in nicely to one of my final points, which is what about the future now? And I know that you don't have that crystal ball, alongside you to exactly predict. Because if I'd have asked you in 2019 and said, "Well, what's the next few years looking like?" we both wouldn't have thought what would have what would have happened, would we? But in your view, just sort of how promising is those next few years along the sort of same lines of what we've sort of been discussing, and about how sort of digital led and sort of sustainability focused this world is going to be in procurement.
So first of all, I think it's very difficult in the sense that you mentioned that it's very hard to predict something like what will go on in 1 or 2 years. But I think I'm quite safe if I tell you, come back to me with the next interview in 10 years. And in 10 years, sustainability and this VUCA world, so this unpredictability and technology, will still be three major trends that we have in procurement. So I think we are lucky in a situation that these will not change and go away and disappear in just a couple of years. I think volatility will increase. I think technology will increase. I think for sustainability, it's not sure. It looks like it will continue to increase. So we will, and we have limited resources. So some of the really interesting questions is who wins sustainability or technology? So where do you want to focus more in your procurement? But we will have this firefighting in the future. It's unavoidable. And we will see more people with a firefighting mindset working in strategic positions in procurement. So I think one of the things that we can expect is the typical CPO that we have today is in their mid 40s. More than 90% it's male. Many times it's an analytical person who's very data driven. We will see more younger people. We will see more female people. We will see more flexible and qualitative and less quantitative people in procurement. And why? Because it will change so fast, and you need to have this personality to react to that. So I can't tell you what will be in a year, but I can tell you that I expect that these three trends will continue. And my fear is that the volatility coming from crisis and regulation is the one that will unfortunately continue in the next years, maybe most.
Very interesting times ahead, that's for sure. If I was to, in closing, if I was to take you back to the beginning of your career and you know everything that you know now, what advice would you give yourself if you were to do that journey again in procurement?
That's a very difficult question, but let me try it. And I personally think is the most important thing for having a successful career, especially from your own perspective, so that you like what you have achieved and what you are doing, is do something that you enjoy. So if you are at the beginning of your career and you have multiple options and they all kind of look similar interesting, pick the one that you love most. Find something. I think it was in your moderation in the first minute, you said the word exciting. If you can find something that is exciting, stick to it. Maybe a second thing. If you pick something that will be a trend in the future, so if you find sustainability exciting, or if you find technology exciting, or if you find this volatility stuff exciting, which can mean resilience, risk management, agile. We didn't talk about these levels, but how do you handle uncertainty? If you can become expert in really one of these three areas, that would help you a lot, because companies will look for that in the future. So you can expect that if you are really an expert in sustainability or a technology application in your company, that is an important role for your company in the future. The third one, I would say, is a mindset thing. So a lot of career advice, something like 10 or 20 years ago, was something like start with something very small, learn from the bottom, just become good in one tiny thing like tendering, do that for 3 years, and maybe get promoted. I don't think this is the best strategy today. I think now curiosity and having something like an open mindset and a global view on the world is really important. So it's for me a combination of pick a trend topic like sustainability, do what you really love, and have an open and flexible mindset. And if you do all this together, I think you will run into a situation where you can offer to your company something that is really of high value for your company.
Lovely. What a great conversation. Thank you for appearing on the CPO Strategy podcast today, Thorsten.
Thank you, Sean. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the CPO Strategy podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, make sure that you subscribe or like our social media pages so that you never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.